Welcome to the Creating Synergy podcast. My name is Daniel Franco, and today we have welcoming back the lovely Michelle Holland, Director of SynergyIQ, expert in leadership, culture, and change, a mother of two beautiful young human beings,
Yes, they're lovely.
and two ratbag fur babies.
Very much so.
And also a mad Harry Potter fan, probably one of the world's most obsessed Harry Potter fans that I've
Maybe
up there.
Yeah,
Up there.
well, yes. I keep it nicely hidden as opposed to others that don't keep it hidden.
Excellent. So today we have got Michelle back to talk more about the Dare to Lead program that she runs. Now, the Dare to Lead program, and Michelle will go into it far better than what I can. But the Dare to Lead program is run by a lady by the name Brené Brown.
It was created by Brené Brown, yes.
Created by Brené
Yes.
Brown. Now, you spent a little bit of time over in the US with Brené getting this accreditation.
I did, yeah. So it was, I think, at the beginning of 2019. Flew over to San Antonio, Texas, which was a great place in Texas, and spent 3 days learning the program and the research directly from Brené, which was an amazing experience. Just, being able to hear the behind the scenes reasons for the research and digging into it a lot more, because obviously she's been doing research for the last 20 odd years, specifically in the areas of belonging and shame. Interestingly, Brené started looking at belonging. So she looked at how things are connected and how people are connected, and where that ended up leading her to was actually how we become disconnected. And those are things like our shame triggers and the armor that we wear and all of these different things. So she started researching quite a lot in that, and has essentially become one of the world's foremost authorities on vulnerability.
Yeah, so she's pretty famous now.
Well, yeah, gosh, she's even been cameoed as herself in a movie. I think that ends up being
Which one was that?
It's a movie called I can't remember the name of it now. It's like something Wine Country, I think it's called. Yeah.
Actually, I do know that now.
Yeah. So it's a girls' weekend away, and there's a number of quite famous comedian actresses in it, and she does a cameo appearance.
You've made it when you play yourself.
That's what I reckon as well. So all of a sudden, and she's got her documentary that's on Netflix as well, so the Call to Courage, and that was the first time Netflix decided that they'd make a documentary style program with a speaker. So it was very much the first time they'd done anything like this with Brené, and it's
so they've done it in pretty good company, because they did the same recently with Tony Robbins as well.
Yes,
he's got one.
Yes.
Well, they do it with comedians, and why couldn't they do it with actual people who are speaking about
teaching,
educating,
absolutely. Yes.
And her TED Talk is also pretty famous.
Yeah, so I think when I last looked at it, there was like 52 million views on her TED Talk, which is called The Power of Vulnerability. And that was the first one that I actually saw. So when I was introduced to Brené's work, because I've been a fan of Brené's for a very long time, it was around about 2013. And it was The Power of Vulnerability that I was watching. I was doing a year-long leadership program, and they sent me this TED Talk. So I watched that at the beginning of 2013. And, I was in a place at that time where I wasn't ready to accept that vulnerability was part of the process of courage. I was the same as many people that looked at vulnerability as weakness. And when I looked at it, I was like, great video. She's an amazing speaker. She's very entertaining. This is essential learning for every person, but not me. Not me. I can't do vulnerability. I'm a HR manager. I was a senior HR director in a company at that time. And, I had my mask firmly placed and my armor firmly on, and thought I needed that to protect myself because of the environment that I was in. And so I rejected it. I actually rejected her work when I first came across it, because I wasn't ready for this vulnerability thing. funnily enough, what she says in the TED Talk is if you don't do vulnerability, vulnerability does you. So I found that by the end of 2013, vulnerability had done me and done me in. And therefore I kind of went, something in this stuff.
Yeah,
I should probably have a bit more of a look at it. And it was probably about a year later before I picked up her book, which is called The Gifts of Imperfection. I'd watched a few more of her videos. I'd sort of dove into a few things and then picked up the books, the Gifts of Imperfection. And that changed me.
So the the Gifts of Imperfection absolutely would have changed you. It changed me as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So when you say vulnerability done you, can you elaborate? What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So at that time, I had gone through quite a significant, change process for myself. So we talk about transformation. It was a transformative year for me. I was doing a program called the Governors Leadership Foundation here in South Australia, and it's a program where you really dive into not just yourself, but your leadership within the context of the world and the society that you're in. And it really digs into who you are and how you turn up. And it's one of those programs that kind of almost rips you from the inside out. And I walked into the program very much with a view of, I'm going to allow this program to rip me from the inside out, and I'm going to go with it. That was my commitment to myself.
So why were you there? Why were you in that space? Saying like you're open to letting it do that. Had something rocked you previously, or?
Oh, look, I think I was in a place where I was considering what was next for me in my career. I'd been a senior HR manager, director for about 6 years or 7 years by that time. I'd been in human resources for a long period of time, and I was really struggling to figure out what was next for me. And I'd got to a point where I was well known in the industry of HR. I was on the RE Council. So I'd gone to those sort of highest levels of the career pathway. I was volunteering for the professional body. I was at a senior role in a large organization. I was speaking around the country, based on this. I was on national committees and panels representing my profession. So I was really in that place of just going, okay, I feel like I've kind of climbed to the top of the mountain, and what's next? There's got to be a bigger mountain.
What's on the other side?
What's on the other side? There's got to be a bigger mountain. There's got to be still stuff to climb. So I was really searching, and I quite often laugh that, I said to people as I walked into the GLF, it was either GLF or counselling or therapy. So I decided on GLF at that time. But it was a program where I didn't want to just learn leadership again, because I taught leadership. So I didn't want to learn leadership. I didn't want to go into a traditional leadership program. I really wanted something that was different. And because of that whole of world look, like you dive into climate change, you dive into racism, you dive into the criminal system and and all of the things that sit under that. So it really did help with me sort of just opening my eyes up to the rest of the world and going, I used to do all sorts of things in my life, and all of a sudden I've just become somebody who works, and that's it. So what's next? So that's really why I chose that journey, and that's why I walked into it going, I just need to be open to whatever happens. So when I first looked at Brené's work and went, this vulnerability stuff is just not for me, I recognized at the time also that I needed to explore it because I was already rejecting it, and that was the armor going on. So through that year, I started to play with it and go, okay, what happens if I take my armor off? What happens if I take my mask off? What will happen? And what actually happened was what I feared would happen, was that I was actually rejected from the business that I was in. They didn't want this new Michelle. They didn't want the brave, vulnerable, challenging Michelle. They wanted the mask wearing, do what we tell you Michelle, which I've never really been in that, but I found I fell into that a little bit in this organization because of the way in which the senior leadership behaved.
It's the culture of the business.
It was the culture of the business. And like my job was there to try and shift and change the culture. And we'd done such a fabulous job for the first three and a half years. And then of course, change of leadership at the top, change of direction, change of behavior at the top, and things shifted. So through that period of time, I went, I'm going to start being me and the authentic me. And I'm going to say that the direction that we're going in isn't a good direction for the people, for the business. I was having people come to me and say, I don't know what's going on. This isn't okay. It was great 12 months ago. Now, what the hell? So I started challenging and properly challenging. And of course, I wasn't appreciated for that challenge. And, it got to a point where I, on reflection now, realize it was bullying. At the time, I didn't accept that it was bullying because I was the senior HR person. You can't get bullied if you're the senior HR person, can you? Like, this is like, what the hell? I help other people when they're bullied, This doesn't feel right to me. But I know now that it was. I was being left out of meetings that were important. I wasn't being told things that were important. The programs of work that we were putting up were being rejected without proper reasoning. There was all this stuff that was happening that just led me down a track going, this is not the place for me anymore. Like, this is not enjoyable. And, I feared that being vulnerable and opening myself up and being brave, because you can't be brave without being vulnerable, that I would get my head chopped off. That was my fear. And what ended up happening was I was bullied and I got my head chopped off. So my fears came to realization, which, could have crushed me completely. But I think because I dropped myself into that place of going, I actually just want to be my authentic self, and I enjoyed being my authentic self, that I ended up leaving that organization and starting a business at that time. It's like, go out of that and straight into working for yourself. Like, seriously, don't do that. Crazy crazy time. And that really affected my identity. It affected who I was. It affected all of these things that I thought were me. So I was really starting to rip myself from the inside out. So when I picked up the Gifts of Imperfection, it actually really, really affected me, because it's very much about, we use perfection as armor. That's what we do. We use this perfectionism. I want to be seen as being the best. I want to be seen as, the top of the mountain. And that's where I was. I was at the top of the mountain. I was, seen as someone who was pivotal in the space of human resources. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. And what did that mean for me? Did that mean that I'm not who I am anymore? So it was really that turning on the head thing. Yeah. So that was in, I think, about 2014 or so that I had that turning myself inside out moment, and started really diving into the work that Brene had put out, just personally. Yeah. Personally.
Because she's got more than one, two books.
She's got 5 New York Times best-selling.
Is there an order in which you would suggest people read those books?
Look, I think The Gifts of Imperfection was definitely the one that she released that went to the top of the charts really quite quickly. Yeah. That's not her first book. I think it was her second book. And she's got a lot of books that are in between, or programs. So The Gifts of Imperfection for parenting and all sorts of things. So she's got lots of different ones.
But is there a general step guide to the way she's written her book? So, Gifts of Imperfection is about self.
Yeah, so I would, in the way I generally recommend people read them, if it's a order of which they want to do a self-development journey, Gifts of Imperfection is first, then Daring Greatly, and then Rising Strong. Yep. So those 3 books combined are really the ones about releasing the leader within, is what I would say.
And that's where Dare to Lead was born? Is that
so Dare to Lead came out of, it's got the price tag on there, Daniel. You need to take the price tag off. What the heck?
I just read them. I don't
just
worry
read them.
Don't worry about
that.
What's on them.
So the Dare to Lead book came from the fact that, Brene had done all this work and people were really appreciating her work and really diving into it like I did and using it to shift and change themselves from the inside out. Yeah. And there was a number of organizations, like the Googles of the world and Pixar and, and Nike and all these big companies, which were saying, hey, I've picked this up and I'm now starting my journey as a leader from the inside out. I'm changing myself. How do I bring this into my workplace? Because who talks about shame at work? Who talks about the fact that we have these emotional triggers and that comes from our past at work? Like, nobody does that. We don't talk about that stuff because that's vulnerability and we don't want to look weak, so there's this loop. So they were asking Brene, can you come in and talk at our workplaces? And interesting, Brene actually comes from an organizational development background. That was her original career before she went into social work. So she's like, okay, yep, working with organizations, that's kind of my bag, no worries, I can do that. Came in and then started that journey where she was being asked more and more and more to come in and talk with leaders and how leaders actually develop these inner skills. It's self-actualization, if you think about that in the broadest sense. It's how do I reach my full potential? Well, I can't do that by looking at things outside. I have to look at the inside. Leadership is an inside-out job.
Yeah.
So she decided that there's got to be something in this and started a 7-year journey of research into how does these things apply in the workplace and can they be used to transform organizations? And so she did some research, and one of the key questions she asked was, well, if you could change anything in your workplace to get better outcomes, better success for you, your team, the organization, your customers, what would that be? And overwhelmingly people said, we need braver leaders and more courageous cultures. We need to have more robust and tough conversations. We're holding things back. We're not speaking our mind. We're not challenging each other enough. We need to have braver conversations. So she started on a journey on, well, what creates brave leadership? What creates courage? And she discovered through this research that there are 4 key skill sets that actually create courage. So she found out that courage is actually a teachable, observable, and measurable skill.
I think that's why we really love her work, is because it is based on research. But what does that research look like? Do you have any background on that? Or
so she does what's called grounded theory research, which essentially means she's a story collector. So she goes out and speaks to hundreds, actually thousands now of people, her and her team, not just her, but her and her team, and she gathers stories. So they ask questions and then the people start telling her these stories. And then through that, she starts to discover the themes or the common elements throughout these stories and pulls them together. And one of the elements of grounded research is there's no outliers. So in normal research, you have outliers, something that's right at the beginning or right at the end and usually gravitate to the middle section. Well, in grounded theory, there are no such thing as outliers. So it's how do you capture the outlying information into this body of work as well. So, she calls herself a storyteller and a story collector, and that's really what she's done. So grounded theory is she's had all of these conversations with people, pulled all of the information together, and then given it back in a packaged format, which is really why people go, I really respond to Brene's work. I connect with it, I really connect with it.
Because I know that type of character.
That's exactly me. Right, because that is me, and that's essentially what she says is, everybody resonates with it because I've essentially taken your story, repackaged it and handed it back to you.
You interview enough people, you're going to hit one that's similar to where you're at.
Yeah, well, she said that her and her team currently have about 400,000 data points to review through all of this research. Currently, the research she's working on is more in the emotional intelligence and emotional literacy area. That I think is going to be her next book coming through, whenever it comes through the next year or so.
That'd be great.
Obviously, COVID's kind of unraveled certain things that have happened, but that is the next wave of this. So she's really starting to dig under much more of that emotional intelligence, or what we call emotional intelligence. She generally calls it emotional literacy, which I prefer because I think it's much more accessible.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence gets a bit like, oh, geez, do I have to be really, really clever at this whole emotion stuff?
You're dumb emotionally.
Yeah, you're dumb emotionally if you don't know it, but it's emotional literacy that's important, understanding those emotions.
Understanding.
Yeah, so all of that research, all of the, from her research she did with individuals as well as then with organisations, she packaged all that up and then wrote Dare to Lead.
It's amazing. It's an amazing program. I've sat in on a few ones that you've done before. So you're accredited in Dare to Lead. There's only a few people, handful of people in Australia that are.
Yeah. So there's a cohort of 300 Dare to Lead certified facilitators across the world.
Across the world?
Yeah.
And you're one of them?
And I'm one of them.
Pretty proud moment.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And being able to, be one of the first cohort to go through the program as well has been a great journey, because we've been able to provide feedback back to Brene and her team, which she's now incorporated into that program, because the program is actually shifting and changing now because of the feedback that we've been able to provide to her on, trying it and doing it in different ways. And the really cool thing, I think, with the Dare to Lead program is it is based on the book, right? So it's taking the learnings within the book and actually really digging into them, in a personal way. So taking that time to go, okay, what does this actually mean for me? And let's run through a process of really digging into it. So it brings the book to life. The cool thing that Brene did when she, taught us all and we all became certified facilitators, she said to us in the program, she's like, I don't want you to all be Brene Brown cover bands. That's not what I want.
Yep.
She says, I want you to understand the research. I want you to take the learning. I want you to take the curriculum, and I want you to make it your own.
Yeah, that's good.
So I think
which
that's
is what you've done.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of the Dare to Lead program, is that you might go to a program with one facilitator and then go to one with another facilitator, and the baseline is the same, but the punchy points are different.
Yeah.
The application is different. The way in which it's taught is different. And we're all part of a big facilitation group as well, so we share different things with each other. There's some really creative ways that people are exploring values, or they're exploring trust, or they're exploring empathy and shame and all of those sort of things. So, we learn from each other and we grow and grow and grow. So I don't think I've run one that's been exactly the same.
It depends on who's in the room and the conversation that goes on. I think that's why it's...
Yeah.
I think I've sat in a couple and... each time you feel connected to whoever's in that room.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the program as well, is because it's more about facilitating discussion and facilitating learning. It's not a follow the bouncing ball kind of approach.
So your typical leadership program is, this is what a leadership look like, right? It's an education piece on what leadership duty is, I guess.
Well, there's different kinds of leadership programs. I mean, the unfortunate thing is we've mixed up the terms leader and manager quite a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of leadership programs are actually management programs. And that's an important skill and a necessary skill for you to be within an organization. You have to have management skill to be a manager and a leader. To teach leadership, it's a very different model and different concept. So there are some really great leadership programs out there that do teach that leadership, and they always start from within. And I think that, to me, is the beauty of the Dare to Lead program, is it starts from within before you start looking outside of yourself. So we talk about in the program how to give and receive feedback, but we don't go through here's where you start, go sit in a room, confidentiality, blah, 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 that you would learn in a management or HR course. It's about how do you prepare yourself as a leader to be able to provide the best kind of feedback for that other person that's going to help them reach their full potential.
Yeah.
That's so much more important than the step-by-step process of how to deliver a feedback conversation, because it really goes into that, I'm a human, you're a human, let's connect, let's do this together. And guess what? I actually give a shit about you.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm going to sit with you, not across from you, and give you something. We're going to do this together. We're going to develop together, which is so much more meaningful for the other person. And particularly if you're having to have a conversation with them, which is a bit tough, which is, it didn't go the way we wanted it to go. You didn't do what you needed to do. You didn't have the capability, the capacity. We need to grow that in you so you can deliver something better next time.
Yeah.
Those are tough conversations to have with people because we have ego in that and all the rest of it, right? So they're tough conversations to have. Being able to have the inner strength and wisdom to be able to turn up to that meeting and go, I'm actually going to sit here with you as we go through this. I'm going to sit here as a leader and feel your discomfort with you, tap into the emotion that you're feeling and empathize with you. That's a bloody tough place to be as a leader.
It is
so much
uncomfortable.
easier. Oh, yeah. So much easier to walk in a room and have just that complete IR, this is the process. I'm just going to run through it. I'm just going to tell you, and I've hit all the points. And then whatever you're feeling is your feelings, nothing to do with me. And now I'm
here to do a job.
Yeah.
I'm no concern for your
absolutely
emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very different, very, very different way of looking at those more traditional management type skills.
The book on our podcast, we've had and all completely unrelated. I'd say dead lead book. When I ask the question, what's your favourite book? Hands down, majority of the people on this podcast so far have said Dare to Lead. Yeah. and they've got no, and Gabriella and I have looked at each other and laughed and said, well, actually, we haven't paid you to say that because it is such a powerful book and the learnings to come from it. What I really love about the program too is that you get a bit of Brene in the program.
You do,
don't you? You
yes.
get her pop up on the screen and she has she almost is a co-facilitator in the process. Can you tell us a little bit more about the way the programs run?
Yes. So there's actually a very clear curriculum that has been developed for the Dare to Lead program. So to get the certificate at the end and all that sort of thing, it's currently a 16-hour program. It's moving to a 24-hour program.
Yeah, wow.
So currently a 16-hour program, you get your certificate at the end. You have to go through the entire curriculum. And at different points through that curriculum, Brene has actually done videos at each point to help educate.
Yeah.
So there are, I think, 12 videos of Brene's. Now, I choose not to use all of her videos. I use, I think, 5 of her videos. And it's just because that's the way I like to facilitate.
Yeah.
Some people do. They use all of the videos, content. But it's really great because what she does is she actually talks about the research. She talks about her application of that research, the experiences, and she's a real storyteller. So she's always, she's funny as well.
It's very relatable from all perspectives, I guess. I think there's a common theme of seeing probably less male people within the class, I guess, and for me, she hits the mark regardless because she talks about her husband a lot. She talks about examples of her workplace and some of the guys in her workplace. So it's still for the male perspective, it still hits the mark.
Absolutely. It is for everyone. We do find that in the public programs, there's more ratio female to male, definitely in the public programs, in the public arena. In the in-house programs that we've run, they've been 50-50 because, it's like, they're the leaders business, in the business, right? So they've walked into the room and the guys enjoy it just as much, if not more sometimes, than the women in the room because they don't have the opportunity all that often to actually dig into who they are as a leader. There's a different level of society expectation that's provided to men that they're not supposed to dig into that kind of stuff. It's not manly or whatever the crappy society.
Well, shame and vulnerability.
It's shame and vulnerability equals weakness a lot of the time, and that's really drilled in from society's messages to men in particular.
Yeah, you and I have had many a conversation
We have,
about
yes,
this.
yes.
It
absolutely.
is definitely soul searching. When I did this, and because you ran our team through the program, it hit some nerves. I think, but all the books that I remember reading, Gifts of Imperfection, and being a mess. I was an
Yes.
absolute mess because I'd built this story about myself. You know, and there's a little bit of ego floating around.
Absolutely, of course. Everybody's got ego.
And it tore me right back down to shreds. But what I think it did for me was build a really good, solid foundation. Or not build a solid foundation. The foundation was already there. It made me understand the boundaries of that foundation and what I was potentially making up in my own head that existed in my life when it didn't actually exist, or I was trying to be someone that I wasn't trying to, to fulfill other people's expectations of me. So it's look, the journey's long. I'm still on it.
Absolutely,
but,
it is. Yes,
it definitely her research has been fundamental for my career as well. And I think I thank you for that. You introduced me to her.
Probably.
So. Yes. Why is this different than all the other leadership programs? What are we expecting? And I know you do the public stuff, and you mentioned you also do in-house. Is there a difference in the way you run it, or is it the same? How is it different to all other programs?
Yeah. So I guess it is made to be a face-to-face learning program. I have run online as well. It's different, particularly from a facilitation point of view. It's a little different, but it's still quite powerful. It is made to be a face-to-face because it's made to increase that connection with other people. And being able to be in a room together to connect with others is an amazing thing. So what I find in the public programs, I generally have, 12 or 15 strangers in a room, and by the end of the 2 days, because we do it in an intensive 2 days over the public, they're leaving, hugging, at the end, exchanging numbers, details, catching up for coffees and all that sort of thing, because the process that you go through is really about vulnerability in action. And as soon as you start being vulnerable with other people start to connect with you.
Funny that,
and there's this beautiful, it's just a beautiful thing to watch.
It's just a great networking experience as well.
Fantastic, absolutely. So I've run, I think, was it maybe 7 or 8, upwards of 10 now, public programs, and each one is very different. Because of the people in the room, but the common element is by the end of the 2 days, there are people who have just connected so strongly with each other that they maintain that relationship ongoing. It is the start of a journey. So I think that's the key component. Is I would never say any leadership program or any training program, I don't care what it is, you're not walking into that room on Thursday morning, walking out Friday afternoon and being a completely different person. You're just not. You may have introduced things that can start you on that journey of being a completely different person. Now, saying that, each program that I've run, whether it's in-house or public, there's always been at least 1 to 2 people in that room that have had these really powerful epiphany moments. They have left that room changed.
There's been a few tears.
Changed.
I've seen a few tears.
Those sort of things.
It's not to scare people off.
No.
It's
dive
the
in.
realization.
Brene calls it a primer course, right? So it's a primer course for anything else you do. So if you go off and you want to learn do that 101 kind of management stuff, being able to be the kind of leader you want to be in those processy moments is so important. So learn the process, absolutely, but you have to turn up and deliver that process. And it's you that's delivering it. It doesn't matter what it says on a piece of paper. It's you that's delivering it. So it's that primer. So the public programs are really great for that, bringing people together and really diving in and really intensive.
Is it run in a way, what are the key themes, I guess? You mentioned 12 pockets or sections or whatever of the course.
Is it like videos.
Vulnerability one, shame another, or is it vision, values? What are the keys?
So there's 4 key skill sets that are learned. So the first one is rumbling with vulnerability, and that one is quite intensive. You spend if it's a 2-day program, you spend the whole day.
So what's rumbling?
Rumbling means to be in something and stay in it even when it's hard.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get ready to rumble.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
staying in even when it's hard. And it's really about going through that process. It's a lot of, there's an emotional intelligence aspect to it. There's understanding how to be empathetic. When you're not empathetic, there's the empathy misses. It's when you're turning up and wearing armor. So we explore the armor that people, traditionally wear, particularly in organizations that contribute to or undermine maybe the culture of the business.
So when you say armor,
yes,
is that the front that they're putting on? Is that what you mean?
It's
by
a protection
yeah.
whatever they're using to protect themselves from the hard stuff in life. So there's
so the stories they're telling themselves, or the way they act, or the way they
it's a behavioral thing generally, or it's a mindset.
Okay.
As well. So it's whatever I'm doing to protect myself. So one of the ones that stands out for me, and it also comes up a lot in many, many of these discussions, is what's called hustling for worth. So it's really about, I've got to make sure everybody around me knows how good I actually am. So it might be in a meeting, I'm just going to talk over people so that they know that I'm really good at this. I'm just going to tell them everything that I know about that particular topic, even if it doesn't add value to the conversation, because what's going on inside is I don't think they think that I'm worthy. So I need to tell them that I'm worthy, and I just show them like all this stuff that I can do.
Well, it's actually detracting from their experience, and isn't it?
It is, and it is a real hustle. That's the thing. It's a real hustle, and I'm hustling so that you think that I'm worthy. And there's a lot of energy that goes into that. And when you're putting energy into that, you're not putting energy into anything else. So you're not actually putting energy into really, truly listening to what the questions are being asked before you're giving the answer.
It's a skill.
It's a skill. It is a skill. So that's a protection mechanism though as well. So perfectionism is another armor that we wear. We want everybody to see us as being perfect in whatever we're doing. So if I get this exactly right, then you won't see that I actually don't think I'm enough.
That's the growth mindset type of stuff that comes into play there, versus the fixed.
Totally. There's a lot of the growth and fixed mindset stuff in this.
So rumbling
with vulnerability.
Number one.
Number two is living your values.
Living your values.
Yeah. So
I think
living values. So do I. It's probably my favorite part of the program. I've always done a lot of values work, and I really love this part. And really, it's about digging into who I am and what my key values are, and not just so that we do a values exercise. It's really then, how does that then translate into behavior? How do we use our values to make decisions in our life? How do we use it to frame how we turn up and how we move into what we call the arena? So we talk about, stepping into the arena, because that's where we want to be brave. How do we step into the arena and use our values as a protection instead of using our armor as a protection? So it's a difference between developing protection from the inside out than the outside in. So
I've done a lot of values work in my career. I think this program, and I'm not plugging it because it's you or whatever, but I fundamentally believe that this program, or Brené's research, or whatever it might be, that I walked away, actually, it gave me a whole new perspective on my values. So values are things that can be up on a wall, right? You walk into it and I'm this, I'm respectful, I'm trustworthy, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think for this program, it hit that foundation stage. It's like, actually, this is what's embedded in that concrete in my body.
Yep.
I am that person. Not I live to these values, but I am that person.
Absolutely.
Therefore, I now need to. And it gave me that understanding. It was so powerful.
Absolutely. Because when you know what your fundamental values are, you can actually create your life that actually supports those values. Because I know for myself, when I'm not living within my fundamental values, I'm very uncomfortable in my life.
I agree.
It's not the authentic life that I want to live. So
And
when
it
you,
sounds silly because you could put yourself even more trouble, or you could give stuff away, or
absolutely,
because it doesn't align with your values. But
Yeah.
it's funny the way in the long term it actually comes back and benefits you because
Yeah.
you feel happier. You can go to sleep at night. You
Yeah.
can, it's
yeah, absolutely. So that values work is really important, and it is probably the bit that I really love the most.
it is good fun.
Yeah, it's really good fun.
So number 3,
And then number 3 is braving trust. So
Okay.
braving is Brené's inventory of trust. It's a acronym that's used for looking at different elements of trust, because trust is one of those things that it's such a big concept. It's a little tiny word, but it's such a big concept, and it's hard to talk to somebody about trust. If I walked into the office and said, Dan, I think we've got a trust issue here, then straight away your armor is going to go on, right? Your back's going to get up, you're like, what the hell? What do you mean a trust issue? What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Brené's actually broken trust down into 7 key areas, and each of those areas you explore them separately. And what we often find is as you're going through those different elements, there's 1 or 2 of the elements that are actually the deal breaker for you. So it might be, so one of them is boundaries. B is for boundaries, right? So it might be that.
So braving's the acronym, and we work
Braving
through it.
is the acronym.
Oh, wow.
That's right. So, and she calls it an inventory of trust.
Yeah.
So the inventory, it's braving, B for boundaries, R for reliability, A, I'm going to test myself here, for accountability, V for vault, I for integrity, N for non-judgment, G for generosity.
Well done.
So
I'm glad you remember that's spelled braving.
yeah, well, that was my biggest thing. I was like, what comes next in braving? Need to have it written in front of me.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So those key elements, you start breaking it down. So I mean, this exercise, the exercises that we do on the braving inventory, one of those exercises changed me and actually changed my life. And it wasn't going through the Dare to Lead course. It was previous to that. I was working with someone who's accredited in Brené's other work, and I was working with her one-on-one, and she had me run through this braving inventory because I was having some trust issues with some people, and it actually really changed me. And what I recognized in myself is that the generosity one is actually my deal breaker. When people start, so generosity is essentially, do you put the best thoughts and feelings on what I'm actually doing? Do you think I'm doing the best I can? And when that's not there and there's assumptions made, or it's like I'm being criticized for something that I didn't actually do, and it might be because it's part of your past experience and other people that, either look like me or sound like me or, in your life have done that thing and you've assigned that to me, that's the thing that breaks my trust the quickest. So it's a really good way of being able to understand yourself, but also you can start doing an inventory on relationships that you're in. So I'm working with a couple of coaching clients at the moment that I'm having them run through this exercise because they've got some trust issues between the two of them. So they're doing an inventory on their relationship, and the inventory actually goes through, what do I need to do to build this, and what do they need to do to build this? So it's very much about a relationship is 50-50 point of view as well. So that's a really powerful exercise, and you can do it with teams, you can do it individually, etc. You can do it on yourself. Am I holding my own boundaries?
So on our relationship's 50-50, if you're giving all of your 50%, you're giving 100% for your 50%, right? And they're not, then what?
Well, that's part of your boundaries, right? So it's really, if they aren't giving to this relationship and I've said that I am giving to this relationship and that's part of my boundaries, then it's might be time to walk away from the relationship.
Or have a conversation.
Or have the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. So there's things that you can do, obviously, to rebuild trust,
absolutely.
rebuild relationships. And that's when you then have one of those tough conversations, which we call a rumble. It's that rumbling conversation where we're going to stay in this even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. So it's there's a number of different tools that are used, with Rumble tools that are provided as well, so people can have those kind of conversations. We have these things called Rumble starters, and and they keep the conversation going. And they're really powerful tools to help rebuild or build relationships.
Out of all your time, hang on, we've got number 4.
One more. Yeah, there's one more.
Yes.
So the last one is a really important one, and it's learning to rise.
Learning to rise.
Yeah, learning to rise. So, so it's based on the Rising Strong book that she has, and that's really about if you're going to be brave, you're going to fall. That's just the physics of bravery. It's just the physics of courage.
You can put yourself out there, you're going to get hit, right?
That's exactly right. You put yourself out there, you're vulnerable enough, often enough, you're brave enough, often enough, you are going to fall. And it's really a reflection tool. That's what the Rising Strong process is. It's a reflection tool. So it's looking back on a failure, looking back on a fall, and starting to unpick what it looks like for you. It's starting to look at why you survived that fall. You know, you're still here, you survived. Why did you survive? Why did that fall hit you as hard as it could be? And that's all linked back to the stuff we'd talked about before, and the trust and the values and the vulnerability and all the rest of it. It's all interlinked.
What comes forth, yeah.
That's right. So really the reason that fourth skill set is so important is because if you're going to teach somebody to be courageous, you have to be able to teach them to survive when they fail. Because otherwise they'll fail for the first time, they'll put themselves out there, fail, and never do it again because it hits them too hard. But recognizing that we all fail and we can survive and learn from failure is a really important skill set to have.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So you said you've done a few now, and I was going to ask this before. Out of all the people that have gone through this program, what are some things that they've come to you? They give you feedback. They give you some, they come and comment. What are some of the things that you hear people say and take away from it? Oh, I really learned this, or I really got this from it. What are those? What is just a couple?
Yeah, it varies from person to person. So there's not one thing that I can go point to and say that's the thing that everybody takes away. So some people really respond well to the conversation around empathy and understanding what empathy is, because that's they haven't maybe put it into practice the way they needed to put it into practice before. A lot of people do talk about the shame shields that we go through and what happens when we do have a shame attack. And the shields that actually go up and the impact of those shields going up as well. So there's a lot of comment on that. I'll tell you a little story. I was at a workshop myself as a participant, and I sat across the table from this woman. I looked at her and I'm like, I know her from somewhere. Like, where's she from? And then it came to me. I'm like, she was in one of my Dare to Lead programs. So, we said hello and that sort of thing. And then at the morning tea, I'd gone and got myself a coffee, and she came over to me and she said, I just need to say to you that Dare to Lead program changed my life. And I was kind of like, whoa, okay, that's taking a little back. I'm like, wow, okay, that's amazing. I said, well, what, tell me more, like what way? And she says, I embed the learnings into the work that I'm doing. She was in a learning and development role, so she was able to work with teams, and she embedded it within the teams. She said, but personally, the values work has just changed my life. She says, after I left the room, I dug into it a lot more. I started to really analyze where my values were turning up and where they weren't, and how I was living within them and when I wasn't. She says, it's just changed my life.
It's powerful.
It's so powerful. It's giving me goosebumps now thinking about that, because that is literally why I do the work that I do, is so that people apply the learning and continue learning from it. It's not just about that day. It's not, there's lots of great feedback about, at the end of the 2 days, or the end of when I do it in-house, I generally break it up into 5 or to 6 modules. Depending on their appetite for being out of the office, and then we can actually add a little bit more into it as well. So add a few extra bits, custom make it
for the business.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
What's happening in their business.
Yes, that's right. So we break it up and do it in different ways as well, which is quite cool. But the feedback during those sessions it's always great. But it's the stuff that I get after the fact is when I start talking to people afterwards, months down the track, and they say that gem was just amazing. The story I tell myself, just understanding now that I am a storyteller and I will fill in the blanks, and don't just run with that story that I've told myself, but just go validate it. Just even that there changes people in the way they turn up.
And it changes organisations too. I mean,
absolutely.
There's some of the growth that we've seen out of the work you've done with the organisations has been remarkable as well.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
you talk about that?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example of somebody that attended one of the programs. She actually took back some of the tools back to her executive leadership team.
Yeah.
They hadn't attended the program, because one of the criticisms that quite often comes up is that the language that's used in Dare to Lead is quite specific to Dare to Lead.
American.
It's very Texan.
Yeah.
It's very Texan. And particularly that term rumble. So she actually took the term rumble back to her executive team. She explained what rumble was. She gave them some understanding about the tools, and she worked with them over a period of time, and now they use that term to say, okay, we're going to have a rumble now.
Yeah.
Rather than this is just a meeting or this is a conversation or whatever, this is a rumble, which actually indicates to everybody in the room that this is going to be a conversation that we need to stay in, that we actually really need to have a robust conversation. It could get uncomfortable. We need to bring our honesty pants with us, into this. That terminology, even though it's criticized, meant that it was a trigger for everybody in the room to know that this was a conversation we were going to have, and it might be a bit tough, but that's okay. We need to get in there and we need to be in it. Brilliant. So she took that from the program and embedded it within the team, in the team that hadn't actually gone through the program. So there's lots of transferability of this work. The ones that we've run in-house, people have embedded it and they're able to test out and try different things with each other. One of the groups that we've been working with have put their full leadership team through, so there's almost 40 people by the end of the program going through it. So they now have a new language that they're using in-house. Right. And they've redone their values now, and some of the language is embedded within their new values. So it's spreading out to the entire organisation.
That's so good.
Yeah, so they haven't used the term rumble in their values. So
not yet.
Not quite. Yeah.
Do you need to read the book to be in the course, to take part of the course?
No. If you want to read the book. I actually recommend.
You can get it on audio too if you don't want to read.
Totally.
If you're not a big reader.
Yes, and Audible, she actually reads the book.
Does she?
Yes, so
Brilliant.
Brene actually reads the book, which is amazing. No, you don't need to read the book to turn up to the program. The program is built for people who have never even been introduced to Brene's work before. And I've worked with numbers of people now who didn't actually know who Brene was, and then introducing her to the work, and they've just loved it.
They've loved her, because you can just go on YouTube and type in Dare to Lead, and you'll get a whole bunch of information about what it's about, but I don't think you'll get the depth that you, and obviously the connection with others. Because the thing is about the course too, there's 10, 15, 20 other people in the room, and you learn off their experiences too. They almost might say something. I think I remember someone saying something once, and wow, I've never thought about it that way, and I'm going through the exact same thing. So it helps you take those blinkers off, I guess, because you can see things from other perspectives.
Absolutely, I find some of the most powerful moments end up happening in the breaks. Yeah, I was overhearing somebody speaking, and it was a fairly junior person. So she'd come into the program. She was quite junior in a small business, and she was talking to one of the guys in the room who was a senior executive in a really large business, and they were chatting and sharing these stories that were very similar stories. So even though she was a junior in this small business and he was a senior in a big business, they had shared this meaningful experience together, and were able to help each other work through some of this stuff, which was just, that to me is so powerful. Like, I love seeing that, and I love the stories that people are able to provide, and everybody learns from each other, which I think that's my job as a facilitator. It's not to go, hey, I'm the the be all and end all, and I know everything. I don't. I absolutely don't. What I'm there for is to create an environment where people can share.
Yeah.
And as soon as they start to share, it helps somebody that's sitting next to them or across from them. And it's great. It's a beautiful experience.
Excellent.
I love it.
Is there anything else that you want to add about the program before we...
I don't think so. I think we've explored it quite well, actually. I mean, there's a lot of activity work in it. There's, a lot of takeaways.
You get your own...
Yeah, your workbook and, a lot of the activities as well. It's made to be applied. Yeah. That's what the program's all about. So I encourage people to take the book, take the exercises back to their teams and run their teams through these exercises as well, because it's a program that's made to be used. It's made to be spread. Brene Brown's vision is that she wanted to start a global conversation about shame and connection, and she's done that. That's an amazing thing that she's created. So getting that work out there is just brilliant.
You get an accreditation, a little badge for it as well.
You get a certificate. You get a certificate of training. You don't get accreditation, but you get a certificate. Certificate of training, and you get a badge for your LinkedIn as well, which tells
great.
you. I know, it's awesome. I love that.
Creates another little community on.
Totally.
You've done your dead lead.
Yeah, you've done dead lead training. That's right. So you can have that conversation and the language. You can start talking. Talking Texan together.
Start rumbling with some people.
That's right. No, it is. Look, I love it. I'm quite biased, obviously, but I do love it. I was looking for a program myself that was about self-actualization and more about leadership from within, rather than that more traditional 101 kind of leadership training, which is, there's lots and lots and lots of programs out there. This was something that I was looking for myself. So I'm really excited that we can offer this, as well as we also do the 101 stuff. It's like, how do you then translate this into action in the workplace?
I think what's exciting is that you've been bringing this into all the work that you do anyway with organisations. The language is there, the fundamentals are there. So
I've now got to the point where if we're doing a culture transformation program, that I run the leaders through this program. It's just part of that
it's a
journey.
Non-negotiable.
It becomes that. Absolutely, because it's fundamental stuff, fundamental skills for leadership.
Brilliant. Where can we get hold of you, and are there any public courses coming up? Like, how does the public courses do that? People have to sort of just follow you on LinkedIn? Or
so if people can connect with me on LinkedIn, that's great. SynergyIQ.com.au is our website, and we have a page devoted to Dare to Lead on there. So any of the current programs, whether they be public or short courses, that sort of thing will be on there. We're doing a plan for the next half of this year now and putting that out there. Obviously the whole world as in events. Virtual and there's been some restrictions around virtual programs.
Lifted now here in South Australia, so we'll see some movement.
That's exactly right. So we need to now replan, because we did have a number of programs planned that ended up kind of falling away because of all the restrictions. But so if you go to SynergyIQ.com.au and have a look at the Dare to Lead page, then the programs that are ready for booking will be there. And
follow Michelle Holland on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm happy to connect with everybody. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks again,
Thank
Michelle.
you. That was fun.
Thanks, everyone. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.